What I'd like to talk to you tonight about, is we're going to prepare ourselves for Rosh Hashanah. And in our preparation, really we have to understand what the whole purpose of judgment is all about. Now, I'd like to ask everybody a question, and answer me truthfully. What's our emotion on different holidays? How do we feel on different holidays? For example, let's take Pesach. How do we feel? What's the emotion on Pesach? Joy. Why is joy? Because God took us out of slavery. Beautiful. Sukkot. What's our emotion on Sukkot? Sukkot, the emotion is joy, right? It was a time of great happiness. God sustained us in the desert. He gave us man. He brought us in these little huts, or Nani Yakavod, clouds of glory. On Shavuot, when God gave the Torah, what's our emotion? Joy, good, happiness. How about Yom Kippur? What's our emotion?
Joy.
Yom Kippur is the happiest day of the Jewish calendar, right? It's the day when God tears up all the parking tickets. He tears up all the decrees against us. He forgives us. We just have to say we're sorry. Happy, happy, happy day. Serious day, happy day. What's our emotion on Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. What's our emotion? What are we supposed to be feeling? Guilt? Not a bad suggestion. How about fear? How about trepidation? Fear. Supposed to be afraid. You know, if God is judging us, if God is scrutinizing our actions, shouldn't there be a type of fear? There should be. I think I would be. We should be. God's examining our lives. He's looking at us. There should be fear. Yet it's interesting, in the halakha is not based on fear. The halakha says, you know what? Have a delicious meal. Wear nice clothing. Go to the synagogue and sing really uplifting songs. Right? Get a haircut. It's a yontif. How can we have a yontif, a celebration, when we know that we're being judged? Seems to be a paradox. Seems to be a contradiction. Think about that for a moment. Just one question I have. Second question I have is, what day of the year does Rosh Hashanah fall on? Is it the first day of the, what day is Rosh Hashanah on? It's on the 1st of Tishrei. That's interesting. If you're going to judge somebody, there's going to be judgment. If you're a teacher in a classroom, when do you give the final exam? The last day of the old year, true? You never give the examination, or the final examination, on the first day of the new semester. You know, imagine coming back to college in a semester, and all of a sudden, after a great summer, your teachers pull out a test and say, okay, here's the test for everything we covered last year. What would you say? See, that's not fair. It doesn't make sense. Test me at the end of last year. What I did last year. This is a new year. Now think about this very carefully. Rosh Hashanah falls when? Rosh Hashanah falls on the first day of the new year. The first day of the new year, not the last day of the old year. Very interesting. What's going on? How come Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of the new year and not on the last day of the old year? If I'm going to be judged, God, judge me at the end of the old year, not at the first day of the new year. Very interesting concept. So what I'd like to do with you tonight is I'd like to get a little bit of clarity on why Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of the new year and not on the last day of the old year. And if we could understand that, we'll understand the first question, which is, why when God judges us on a day of judgment, it's not a day of fear. It's a day of rejoicing. It's a tremendous day of rejoicing. Now let me just add one more question into the picture, and then we'll begin the lecture. When are we actually judged on Rosh Hashanah? When does the judgment take place? Remember, Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. When does the judgment take place? You know when it takes place? It takes place at the point in which we hear the shofar. We go to the synagogue, you hear the shofar. That's the point in Shemayim in heaven where God is opening up our ledger and He's taking a very, very careful look at us. There's one problem with that. The halacha says in Jewish law, that we're supposed to, with enthusiasm, go to the synagogue and blow the shofar. We're supposed to try to get up early and blow the shofar. Now, does that make any sense to you? Imagine that you're going to be judged in a secular court. Right? You have to go downtown Brooklyn. You know you're guilty. Right? There's no person in the world who lives without sinning. Right? We know we're guilty. And we know that when we blow the shofar, that's when judgment is going to take place. But you know what we do? we rush to the court and say, guess what? Judge me. You imagine you're sitting on some judge down there, he has all your parking tickets in front of you, and you rush, you say, take a look at my parking tickets. Give me a judgment. I want a judgment. Right? You have to be crazy to do that. Yet on Rosh Hashanah, we say to God, we blow the shofar, and when we blow the shofar, that's when judgment takes place, as if to say to God, judge me. I want to be judged. How come I want to be judged? I don't want to be judged. Does anybody want to be judged? Can we pass a judgment? Can we pass an examination? Right? There's no such thing. The human being, we're created in a way that what it means to be human means not to be perfect. Right? We know that we're not perfect. And very few people are perfect already. Few exceptions. Arthur's one of them. Right? But most of us aren't perfect. So we know that on Rosh Hashanah, we don't want to be judged. Yet we rush to the synagogue and say to God, judge me. When I blow the shofar, I'm being judged. Doesn't make any sense. Very, very interesting day. But I think we get a little bit of clarity on some of these three questions. Why we rejoice, why it's the first day of the new year when judgment takes place and not the last day of the old year, and why we anticipate the judgment. We ask God to judge us. If we can answer these three questions, I think we'll have a whole different perspective on what the judgment is all about, what the day is all about, and what Rosh Hashanah is all about. I think you'll have a totally different holiday. So stay with me. Follow the train of thought. I'm going to take you something which is very, very beautiful. Question. Why did God pick the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishrei to judge mankind? Why this day?
Creation of the first man.
Creation of the first man. Good. The first man was created on the first day of Tishrei. We know the world was created on the 25th of Elul. 6 days later is the first day of Tishrei. We know that Adam was created on the 6th day. Good, fine. But why is this day a day of judgment? The answer is that it's a day of judgment because this was the day when the first man was judged. Question. How long did Adam survive in the Garden of Eden? How long was he there for?
A few hours.
A few weeks? A few years? Few hours. Let me read to you what it says in the Gemara. It says it follows. It says, Shah Rishon, on the first hour of the 6th day of creation, Allah b'makshava. Hashem thought about creating Adam, creating man. Shniya nisyayitz malchi hasharetz. On the second hour, he asked advice from the angel. That's why it says, let us make man, by the way. When you look into Torah, what does it say? Nasa Adam b'tzalmeinu, let us make man. Who's God speaking to when he says, let us make man? Talking to the angels. He's nisyayitz in the malchi hasharetz. And we learned something from that, by the way. We learned something that before you make any major decision in life, you're supposed to ask somebody. Even if the person doesn't know as much as you. It shows humility. And God was trying to teach humility. He asked the angels for advice before he decided to create man. So before you make any major decisions in life, you don't rush into them. You always ask advice from somebody. Even if the person doesn't know as much as you. Certainly angels don't know as much as God. But it shows humility. So before you all get married, right, please ask somebody. You could ask me. You could ask Rabbi Lunenberg. Ask your friends. Ask your parents. Don't just rush into it. Ask somebody. What do you think? Do you like this person? You don't like this person? I'll just tell you one funny thing. But tonight, so a friend of mine is coming from Eretz Yisrael, and he's actually one of Sharansky's advisors. A good friend of mine. And so he's going to stay with us for Shabbos. He's on a speaking tour. So we were going out to somebody's house for Shabbos, so I called this person up and said, a good friend of mine, he's a Sharansky advisor. He's coming in, could he join us at your home Friday night with our family? The person's like, absolutely, sure, beautiful, please have him. So I said, thank you so much, we'll see you Friday night. And so I hung up. First thing my wife says to me, she says, call him right back. I said, why should I call him right back? I said, you didn't tell him that he's married. He's married. He's married with 3 kids. He said, call him right back. The person you just spoke to was probably thinking, oh, he's single. He's nice. He's a nice guy. She's going to set him up with somebody. Call her right back and tell her that he's married. So I said, why would you possibly think that? So my wife said, you don't understand it. You don't get it. The first thing a woman is thinking about when he hears that man is coming over is he married? Is he not married? I said, I think we see that. I said, didn't even cross my mind. So my wife, I think, called her back and said, by the way, he has 3 kids. He's married, happily married. In any case, what? Happily, single guy, nice single guy, comes over, nice job working with Sharansky. Okay. Where were we? Oh yeah, we were creating man. So what happened over here? Second hour, God discusses with the angels to create man. And we learned from that, of course, you have to ask advice before you do something. Third hour of the day, what happened? Konei Safru. Hashem took dust and he gathered it together. It said the fourth hour of the day, what did he do? He molded it. Fifth hour of the day, Rakbu, Hashem shaped it. Sixth hour of the day, Asa Golem. In the sixth hour of the day, Hashem made a golem. It's like he made sort of like a figure of a man with no soul. It's called a golem, like a Frankenstein type creature. B'zayin Zarakbo Neshama. On the seventh hour of the day, God threw in the soul, the Neshama. B'chet Yichniso L'Gan Eden. On the eighth hour of the day, God placed Adam into the Garden of Eden. B'tishis, on the ninth hour of the day, Nitztava. God commanded him not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. B'asiris Sarach, on the 10th hour of the day, Adam sinned. B'yechat Esrei Nidon, on the 11th hour of the day, he was judged. B'shtayim Esrei Yotze V'dimos, on the 12th hour of the day, he was kicked out. How many hours did Adam make it in the Garden of Eden? 2. And 6. 6 hours. From the point where his neshama was breathed into this being, to the point where he was expelled was a 6-hour tenure. It was not a long time period in the Garden of Eden. It was 6 hours. Interesting. Now, what's fascinating about this Gemara, Gloria?
I also heard that their time, like back then, wasn't like the time we have now. It's not 6 hours like we have now. I think 1 hour was like 1 day.
That's an excellent point. The way it's understood, according to most Mefarshim, the first 5 days of creation could be as long as you want. But once we speak about the creation of Adam and the neshama being breathed into him, we're speaking about days and hours as we know. So when we count that the world is 5766, we're really counting from the creation of Adam, the creation of first man.
Question.
Yeah, but the first 5 days were never locked into a day being a day. We're not locked into that. In fact, Jewish philosophy, Kabbalah, has always held that the days weren't 24-hour days. It was only actually with Darwin and the Christian fundamentalists who were trying to fight Darwin. They all said, how can Darwin be right? The world is only 5766, or 5,000 years old. We said, no, never so. We count from the creation of Adam. The first 5 days can be as many years as you want. Many years you need. You need 14 billion, you need 15 billion, whatever you want. You can have it. Okay? No contradiction. But just a minor point. Yeah, quick question.
You say that dinosaurs never actually happened?
Dinosaurs, sure. Why not? It says in the Zohar that before God created this world, he created 6 worlds before it. So it's very possible that when we find creatures or things that are carbon dated to be 3 million years old, it could be from those previous worlds. In fact, the Tiferes Yisrael was a German rabbi in about 1840. So when they were discovering these big mammoths in frozen glaciers out in different places in the world, he wrote an article and he said basically, beautiful, they're 3 million years old, it's a proof to the truth of the Kabbalah. That says there were many worlds before this. And the purpose of those worlds was to show how important man is. God says, I'm willing to create and recreate 6 times before I create man, because that's how important you are. I want the house to be perfect before I put in the guest. Okay. So it's never a contradiction to us. That's one way of approaching it. Different approaches. Another approach is to say carbon dating is wrong. You can go that way also. But it never should affect our amunah. It never should affect our belief and trust. We're not locked into the world being 5766. What we are locked into is being Adam Harishon and his neshama being 5,766 years old. Okay? But don't make that mistake. I spoke to once a very, very famous physicist, and he was very bothered by the fact that he said, look, I looked through my Hubble telescope, and the world is clearly, 15 to 16 billion years old. How can you rabbis tell me it's only 5766? That's what he told me. Jewish guy, very brilliant physicist. And I said back to him, I said, who said the world's 5,766 years old? Where'd you get that from? Adam is 5766. But the world could be as many billion years as you want. And the truth of the matter is 15 billion years isn't nearly enough to produce perfection. Not nearly enough if you claim it's random. Random chance wouldn't produce one protein and one enzyme. You would need much more than 15 billion years. But if that's the number that Hashem wants to use to create it, fine. Okay, are we good?
Question.
Yes.
So when did time came into existence?
When does time come into existence? Time's a creation, right? I don't get to it right now, but time's a creation. Time.
Where does it say?
Look, we know that the sun wasn't created until the third day, right? So if we're going to measure time by the revolution of the earth around the sun, we can't at least start talking about that till the third day of creation. So what happened the first 2 days? We can't talk about time as we know time. So therefore, when the Torah says day, it's a metaphor for something else, according to many opinions. Okay? Good? This is another lecture. It's another lecture. It's not. Good, but don't let it affect your emunah. Don't let it affect your trust. We have plenty to go on. We have a very, very deep tradition. Okay? We're not locked into fundamentalist type principles. Okay. Now, I'm bothered by the statement of the Gemara. By the last statement. The last statement says like this. Let me read it to you. If you know Hebrew, you can translate it for me. It says on the 12th hour of the day, Adam Arishon Yotza B'dimus. Adam Arishon, first man, he sinned, he was judged, he was expelled, but it doesn't say he was expelled. It says, Hu Yotza B'dimus, our sages say. He left with a merciful sentence. He left the Garden of Eden with a merciful sentence. That's what it says. It doesn't say expelled. He left. God gave him a merciful, sweet sentence by sending him out of the Garden of Eden. Now let me ask you a question. How could our sages say that leaving the Garden of Eden was in any way merciful or sweet? Let's contrast the two states of existence. In the Garden of Eden, number one, God was revealed. You could see God. God was totally there, present. You look in the world, there's Hashem. You leave the Garden of Eden, God conceals himself. He's hidden. I mean, imagine what it was like in the Garden of Eden when you could actually see Hashem. We're trying to get back to that state. So how can you say it was merciful to expel him? Number one. Number two, in the Garden of Eden, you didn't have to work to earn your living. Your food was prepared. The curse of leaving the Garden of Eden was b'zei zapecha tochel lechem. You have to earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. And that's what all of you guys are doing and girls are doing in university, right? You're learning careers and trades to go out, so you should be able to earn your living. It doesn't just fall from heaven anymore. You can't just pick it off a tree. We'd like to pick it out of our parents' pockets sometimes, right? But they're not so deep. That's not so good for us. You have to work. It's a curse. It's a curse. Working is a curse. In the Garden of Eden, there was no need to work. Number two. Number three, in the Garden of Eden, there was no death. Part of the expulsion resulted in the fact that now there's going to be death in the world. Death didn't exist in the Garden of Eden, but it does exist outside the Garden of Eden. So, because Adam was judged, death came into the world, one has to work to earn their living, and one's cut off from God. So how can our sages look at that sentence and say, oh, it was a merciful, compassionate sentence, it was a sweet sentence. It doesn't look sweet to me, it looks harsh to me. I can't imagine anything harsher than that. Distancing oneself from God, having to work for a living, and death. Can our sages say, no, Adam Arishon Yotza B'dimus. He left with a merciful sentence. What does that mean? Let's try to explain it. I'm going to explain something to you that you might have not heard before. You might not have heard this before. And this has to do, the Zohar says according to the Ari Zetzah, as to why Adam Arishon sinned to begin. Now remember, in the Garden of Eden, Adam Arishon was commanded to enjoy the garden, as we know. Yet there was one fruit that he couldn't eat. That fruit was called the Eitz Das Tov V'Ra. The fruit which, if he eats that, somehow he ingests evil. What does that mean? In the Garden of Eden, before the sin, the Yetzer Hara, the inclination that we all have, called the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, was outside of Adam. It wasn't inside of Adam, it was outside of Adam. What does that mean? It means that Adam really did not have the challenges and tests that we have today. The challenges that we have in life are because inside our mind exists a Yetzer Hara. And the truth of the matter, the Yetzer Hara is really our best friend. You know why it's our best friend? Because without it, we wouldn't be able to get so much reward. The job of the Yetzer Hara is to create challenges and tests for us. Challenges and tests. Really, one day we're going to understand that that Yetzer Hara that's constantly challenging us was really such a great friend of ours. Why? Because without it, there's no reward. If we didn't have a Yetzer Hara, it would be too easy to choose good. With the Yetzer Hara, there's a challenge. What you're probably thinking right now, what's going on in your mind. Right? What's happening in your mind right now? In your minds right now, what's happening is you're thinking, should I listen to Rabbi Kraft? Should I think about my homework for tomorrow? Should I look across the room? Shouldn't I look across the room? Should the other side of the room, this side of the room? That's called the Yetzer Hara. I have a challenge. Every moment of my life, I'm being challenged and tested. In the Garden of Eden, Adam did not have that challenge because the Yetzer Hara was outside of himself. So the Zohar says, listen carefully, it's very, very interesting. The Zohar says that Adam had the knowledge of evil. He had the knowledge of evil. He understood theoretically that there can be something called bad, evil, disconnection from God. But he couldn't experience it, he couldn't feel it. It's not like we live, where you could, actually in your mind, make a choice to disconnect from God if you want, to do something wrong. He had no feeling for that. Because it was only theoretically understood that, hypothetically, one might be able to cut themselves off from God if they want, but he had no way of really understanding that because he had no internal Yetzer Hara. It was outside of himself. We have the Yetzer Hara inside ourselves as a result of Adam eating of the tree, but he didn't have it. Now it's interesting, one day, as I mentioned, we're going to realize that the Yetzer Hara was really our friend. In fact, it says when Mashiach comes, it says that Hashem is going to take the Yetzer Hara and he's going to slaughter it and shecht it. So what does it mean when he says he's going to shecht it? Shecht the Yetzer Hara doesn't mean he's going to take a bullet and, communist style, like Stalin, in some way, right? And shoot it in the back of the head. That's not what it means. It doesn't say he's going to murder the Yetzer Hara. It says he's going to shecht the Yetzer Hara. Right? What does shechita mean? Shechita is ritual slaughtering. When we kill an animal to eat it, are we murdering the animal? No. We're uplifting that animal. We're taking that animal and we're uplifting it for a higher purpose. That it should now be the vehicle through which we can be healthy and nourished and fortified to serve Hashem. Shechita is the process of elevation of something. So what does it mean? It's when Mashiach comes, Hashem is going to take the Yetzer Hara and he's going to elevate it back to its position where people can understand that really it was there to help us all along. It was to help us to have free choice so that we can have more reward. In the Garden of Eden, Adam did not have the challenges that we have. The Yetzer Hara was outside of who he was. So listen to this. The Zohar says as follows. It says that Adam HaRishon sinned for the sake of Hashem. He sinned for the sake of heaven. It was an avera lishma. What does that mean? It means Adam HaRishon said like this. He said, in the position I am right now, it's too easy to serve God. It's too easy. God, I have no struggle getting to know you. It's too easy to get, as long as the Yetzer Hara is outside of me, of course I'm going to do what's right. I want to drop a level in order to show you that even when my Yetzer Hara is inside of me, and I'm going to eat of the truth, and I'm going to bring it inside of me by ingesting it, I'm going to show you, God, that I can love you even with the Yetzer Hara in my brain. It's easy to love you, God, when the Yetzer Hara is over there, but I want to bring it inside myself and show you that when I have all these challenges and this inner conflict, I'm still going to love you. That's what Adam wanted to do. So the Zohar says it was a sin for the sake of God. You can imagine today, you have Bill Gates. Bill Gates is worth about $30 billion. Just a little bit more than all of us, right? 30 billion. What's the challenge that Bill Gates' son has? Bill Gates' son, let's say, wants to go into business. Does he have children? But let's say Bill Gates has a son. And his son wants to go into business. So if he succeeds in business, what's everybody going to say? Of course he succeeded in business. His father invested $1 billion into the company. It was easy. So if this son really wants to show that he's a businessman, that he's a somebody, what does he have to do? He has to turn to his father, right? And he has to say, Dad, I don't want any money. I don't want a loan. Here are your credit cards, right? With their, 400 million credit line on it. I don't need it. I'm going to do it on my own because I want to show the world that I didn't need you. That I did it myself. I dare say that Adam, he was like a billionaire's son. He's saying to God, as long as I don't have the Yetzer Hara inside me, it's too easy to love you. I want to bring that Yetzer Hara inside myself, and by doing so, I'm going to show the world and show everything that's going to come out of me that I can love you even when there's a fight, even when there's a challenge. Do you hear? That's why the Zohar says it was a sin for the sake of God. He wanted to drop a level to rise a level. He wanted to purposely put himself on a lower level to show that he could love God even on that lower level. That's what the Arizal Tzal says. Yeah, but?
And why was it punished so hard?
Good question. So what do you think God would say to Adam? If I were God, I would turn to God, I would turn to Adam. And I would say, Adam, that was beautiful, You sinned to show your love for me. You ate of the Eitz Hadas in order to drop a level, to internalize the Yetzer Hara, so you can have challenges and struggles and still reveal that you can love me in the process. If I were God, I would have turned to Adam and said, Adam, mwah, that was so beautiful. I love you for that. Oh. You know what God says to Adam? He turns to Adam and he says, Adam, you lack trust. You don't believe. You don't have any emunah. You don't have any faith. That's what he turns and he says. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Adam min hayo. Adam lacked belief. He didn't believe. He lacked trust. He lacked emunah. That's what it says. That was God's criticism of him. Adam, you lack faith. First of all, just a quick question. How can Adam lack faith? Lack emunah? Lack trust? He was just created by God how many hours before? 5 hours before he sins in the 6th day, expelled by the 6th. He's created intimately by God. He knows God intimately. So how can he lack trust, it says? How can he lack faith? So first of all, we see something very interesting, by the way, as to what faith is. What emunah is. Do we need faith that God created the world? Yes, no? Do we need faith that God created the world?
No.
I dare say we don't need faith. I dare say we examine the evidence. We realize there's intense perfection in creation. When you see intense perfection, only somebody who's deranged can say it happened randomly. Perfection says there had to have been a designer. Just like when you look at a house and you see the design, you say designer. You look at the world, you see design, you say designer. That's not faith. That's examination of the evidence. How about God giving the Torah? Does that take faith? Or is that based on knowledge? I believe it's based on knowledge. Right? That God, first of all, He wrote prophecies in the Torah that are going to happen 3,000 years later. They happen to the T. God gives in front of 613,000 men, another 630,000 women, another 1 million children. He gives in front of witnesses. He tells the witnesses to tell your children what happened. He tells every generation, ask the previous generation. I think when we examine the evidence of Torah, we see the facts speak to the fact that there was a revelation in Har Sinai. So what does it mean, however, when we're supposed to have trust? There's a mitzvah in the Torah to have emunah. What does emunah mean? So you know what emunah means. Trust means like this. The Brisker Rav says it very beautifully. The Brisker Rav says, where reason ends, faith begins. Where I can't understand God's ways, that's when I have to trust. That's faith. And we're all challenged with that in life. There are points in our life where we look to God and we say, God, I don't understand. I'm not you. My mind is limited. I can't understand the divine mind. I can't understand the infinite. You know, God, I know that the essence of you is love. I know the essence of you is goodness. I know that your essence, everything that you do, is only for the best. Yet I see 2 million children die in the Holocaust. Right? And I'm questioning and saying, God, I have to utilize my faith and trust to understand that how that's a manifestation of your love. I don't understand it. But I have to use my heart. And say, God, I'm willing to trust you. That if the essence of you is love, that also has to be a manifestation of love. And one day, we're going to see it. One day I'm going to understand it. That also was the perfect way to bring about the perfection in this world. That's trust. Adam Arishon had a test. Adam Rishon had an intellect which was brilliant. He had a mind beyond anything we can imagine. And he had a plan. What was his plan? He said, God, I love you so much, and to show my love for you, I have to eat of the tree. I have to bring the Yetzer Hara inside. And what was the problem with what Adam did? What was his command?
Not to eat.
But it makes so much sense. God, it makes so much sense. I can show my love for you more deeper if I can only internalize that Yetzer Hara. It's too easy to love you when I have a Yetzer Hara over there. I want it inside me. I want to feel that struggle and that challenge like we have. So you know what God says to him? Adam, you don't have trust. Trust means when you don't understand something, you subordinate your limited knowledge to my knowledge. Adam, you're brilliant. You're the best student in the class. But your test right now is to realize that you have to follow my plan, not your plan. As good as your plan might sound, my plan is greater. That's trust. That's emunah. So that's why the Gemara says that God turns to Adam and says, Adam, you lack trust. You lack emunah. Where reason ends, faith begins. You should have trusted me. Ayveh. Adam turns back to God, and he's broken. He's devastated. I blew it. You know, I blew it. I was supposed to have kept the Yetzer Hara on the outside, and now I have it on the inside. And all of a sudden there are tests and challenges and feelings and emotions that he didn't even expect he would feel. And he's devastated. I've destroyed myself. And I betrayed God in the process. Now listen carefully. So you know what God says to him? God says to him like this. Adam, don't worry. I'm going to fix you up. I'm going to make you whole again. I'm going to correct it. Adam's like, how can you correct it? I've destroyed myself. I brought the Yetzer Hara inside me. And God turns to Adam and says, Adam, don't worry. It's going to be all right. I have a plan. We're going to fix you up. We're going to cure you. Adam said, you can't cure me. I'm trapped. I'm in the Garden of Eden where I can't die. I'm in the Garden of Eden where I'm just trapped with my sin forever. So God turns to him and says, Adam, I have a plan. I'm going to send you out of the Garden of Eden. I'm going to get you out of here. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put you in a world where I'm going to hide myself. And every moment of your life now, you're going to have to work to try to find me. You're going to have to trust me because you're not going to be able to see me. You're going to have to use your mind and your heart to perceive me because I'm not going to be visible anymore. You're going to undo that sin of not trusting me by working to have to trust me in every situation. And Adam says, okay, that's great, but it's not enough. So God turns to him and says, and not only that, you know, you're going to have to work to earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. You're going to have to go into the world, and every time you eat something, you're going to have to work to try to get it. You're going to have to trust me. You have to put a seed in the ground, and you're going to have to pray that that seed's going to have water, and the ground's going to nourish it, and that a fruit's going to come up, and the vegetable's going to come up. You're going to have to, even the way you eat, your food's going to only come out because you're going to trust me. And I'm saying, that's fine, that's great, but I'm going to live forever. So God says, no. Adam, I have another plan. You're going to die. And at that point of death, you know what happens at the point of death? The point of death, which every human being experiences, is an amazing, amazing point in life. You know why? It's probably the richest point in life. Because at that point of death, when the human being realizes, you know what? I am not in control. Death is the greatest kindness that God could bring to the world. It's the greatest way for the human being to give up mastery. You know, my whole life I feel I'm in control of my destiny. But there's one point before the human being leaves this world, before the soul leaves the world, where I have to acknowledge, you know, I'm not in control. God, it's all you. I have to subordinate myself to you. It's all you. I have to give myself over to you. So God says to Adam, I'm going to bring death into the world. You're going to die. And when you die, that point of death, you're going to completely give up the realization that you were in control. What caused you to sin was you thought you were smarter than me. But at that point where you're going to die, you're going to realize how wrong you are. And you're going to fix yourself. So Adam turns back to God. Says, Hashem, thank you so much. Thank you. And now we understand something. Our sages say, Adam Arishon, Adam was judged, but he was expelled with a merciful sentence. Do you hear how beautiful it is? We thought death was harsh. No, death is fixing up something. We thought having to work for your bread was harsh. No, working for your bread is the way to develop trust. We thought God concealing himself was harsh. No, concealing himself is the way where Adam has to constantly work to find God at every moment and build and correct that lack of trust that he had when he chose to eat from the tree. And when did this all take place? It all took place on the first day of the month of Tishrei. And God says, just like Adam Arishon was judged with a merciful sentence, this is the day that I want to choose to judge all of Adam's descendants, and that's us. But let me ask you a question. When we look at Adam's judgment, was Adam's judgment a punishment or a fixing? What was it? I dare say it was entirely a fixing. It fixed up the problem that Adam had caused. On one hand, it appears harsh, but it's not harsh at all. It's the perfect medicine for Adam to correct himself. In fact, in this world, and get this very clear, there's no such thing as punishment in this world. Reward and punishment does not exist in this world. It's not a concept in this world. Everything God brings to us in this world is designed to fix ourselves up so we should get where we have to go. So that's what happened on the first day. The first judgment was the perfect fixing up. The judgment that Adam received was so merciful because it was the exact medicine that he needed to undo the terrible, terrible sin that he caused. It wasn't a punishment. It was the medicine. It was a tikkun. It was a fixing. So now we understand something. Let's go back to the original questions we had. We asked ourselves, we said like this, God chooses to judge us when? Not on the last day of the old year, but on the first day of the new year. Do we understand why? If the purpose of judgment was punishment, okay, I might understand why it's better to judge me on the last day of the old year. Look at the old year and say, well, I did this wrong, and this wrong, and this good, and this good, and judge me. Give me my reward, give me my punishment. But if the purpose of judgment is not punishment, but the purpose of judgment is correction, tikkun is fixing, it makes more sense what? To judge me on the first day of the new year. Which means what? God looks at the past year to determine what I need for the new year. He's looking at the old to see what I need so I can perfect myself in this coming year. That's what's happening. And that's why Rosh Hashanah is a day of joy and gladness. I know I'm being judged, but God's judging me so I can perfect myself. He's not judging me to punish me. If he was judging me to punish me, you're right, I should tremble the whole day. I tremble because I'm being judged. But at the same time, God, I realize what everything you're looking at me for is to realize what I need to perfect myself. Just like Adam received exactly what he needed for his perfection. That's why God judges us. Punishment doesn't exist in this world. Everything God does is for the purpose of perfecting the soul, so we can get everything we need for eternity. That's what's happening. You hear what's going on? It's a different day. Judgment, looking at the past to determine what you need for the future. That's exactly what's going on. So God might look at the past year and say, look, I gave you $10,000 this past year. What did you do with it? Oh boy, you bought that 80-inch television screen, right? With that sense-around chairs that wiggle every time, it vibrates them. And aromas and smells would come out of the screen so you could really experience it. And God said, I gave you $10,000 for that? You don't know how to use your money. So God says, you're off in life. You're going the wrong way. So God might say, I got to take some money away this year. Because you don't know how to use it right. Same time God might look at, I gave you $10,000 last year. Wow. First thing you did with it is you gave 10% to charity, tzedakah. Right? You gave 20%. Then you used it to send your kids to yeshiva and to buy beautiful foods for Shabbos and to help people. This year I'm going to give you $20,000. You really know how to use money. Let me see you do more with it. God looks at the past to help us perfect ourselves for the future. It's like a company. You look at the last year's ledger to determine where the company has to go this year. Now it's interesting. we said at the beginning that the first thing that we do on the morning of Rosh Hashanah is we jump up in the morning to blow the shofar. And we know, according to the Kabbalah, that at the point where we blow the shofar, that's when we're judged. And we ask ourselves a question, it doesn't make sense. God, why are we asking to be judged? I don't want to be judged. But wait a minute. I only don't want to be judged if the purpose of judgment is punishment. But if the purpose of judgment is tikkun, is correcting myself, is fixing myself up, that's a different message. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine my little 8-year-old. He started Beis Yaakov today. Imagine she goes to school and she has a little problem. Every time she sees her friends' erasers, she always has to grab it. And she sees these shiny rulers, she takes it. And the teacher calls me up and says, your daughter has a problem. Like every time she sees something she likes in her friend's little knapsack, she seems to take it and put it in her knapsack. I'm like, must be my wife, not me, so I said, okay, well, I'll deal with it. So I called her in, I said, look, your teacher told me that you have a problem with stealing. And we're going to have to do something really, really harsh about it. In fact, those little erasers that you love? I'm going to have to take them away for a week. No, Abba, not the erasers. I don't. I'm sorry. I have to take those erasers away for a whole week. So you should learn what it means not to have what you like. If you realize you won't have what you like, maybe you won't take from your little friends. No, Abba. That's one scenario. Now supposing the following happens. Before I get that call from the teacher, my little 8-year-old comes up to me and says, Abba, I need to talk to you. I say, sure, what do you want to talk about? Abba, I have a problem with stealing. I don't know what to do. Every time I see something my friend has, I just have to grab it. And I hate myself for it. I don't want to do it, but I can't stop myself. Abba, you have to help me. So you know what I say to her? I said, okay, I'm going to help you. You know what we're going to do? We're going to make a chart on the refrigerator. And we're going to get some stickers. And every time you come home from school and you tell me that you didn't take anything from your friends' knapsacks, we're going to put a sticker on. Monday we'll put a sticker, we'll put Winnie the Pooh. And Tuesday we're going to put Mickey Mouse. And Wednesday we're going to put Donald Duck. At the end of the week, if we can see a whole line of Disney characters over there, we're going to go out to Max and Minna's for ice cream. Right? She said, okay, that's a good plan. Now let me ask you a question. How come when the teacher informed me about what she did, I had to have a really harsh sentence? Right? I had to take away her erasers. But how come when she comes to me first, I can have a really sweet sentence? A really sweet way of dealing with it. What's the difference? Because she's coming to me and saying to me, I want to change. That's what our rabbis are saying to us. It says when we blow the shofar, we're not tik esadin, we sweeten the judgment. You know why? Because we're turning to Hashem. We're saying, Hashem, I understand that I failed this year. I understand I'm not perfect, but I want to perfect myself. Hashem, give me what I need to help me. I want to blow the shofar. Hashem, judge me. Because I know the purpose of your judgment is to correct myself. Hashem, I want to be fixed up. I don't like where I am right now. I know I could be much greater. I'm not perfect, but I need your help, Hashem. Help me. Judge me and look at me and help me to get where I know I have to go. Oh, Hashem turns to us and says, okay, you want to be judged. You want to improve yourself. Now I can sweeten the judgment. I don't have to use that harsh methodology of taking away $10,000 because you didn't use your $10,000 correctly last year. I can look at it differently. Okay, I'm going to do it totally differently. Maybe I'll take $100 away or $50 away. Because I see that you want to be corrected. And that's all the difference. That difference is a tremendous difference. So that's why our sages say, we get up early in the morning and we sweeten the judgment by blowing the shofar, because by blowing the shofar we're saying to Hashem, improve me. I want to be improved. Because I realize the whole purpose of the judgment isn't punishment. It's tikkun, it's improvement. And let me ask you a question. Anybody who speaks Hebrew? The word shofar. What does the word shofar mean? It comes from the same root in Hebrew as shipur, which means improvement. Leishtaper means to improve oneself. We blow the shofar, we're saying, Hashem, I want to improve. And therefore, the judgment that God gives us can be so sweet and so gentle and so loving. That's the Rosh Hashanah's all about. Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. It's a day when we tremble because, our lives are on the line. We realize that. At the same time, we're rejoicing. Why? Because we realize the whole purpose of the judgment is to improve ourselves, to fix ourselves up. It's a manifestation of God's love for us. And that answers, I think, the questions that we asked. Number one, why is it on the first day of the new year and not the last day of the old year? Because the last day of the old year would imply punishment. The first day of the new year means we look at the old to determine what we need for the new. It's correction, not punishment. We realize that Adam Arishon, when he was judged, he left with such a merciful judgment. It looked so harsh, death and work, right? And concealment of God. But then we analyzed it and we realized, no, it was so sweet. Because that's exactly what Adam needed in order to bring about the correction, the destruction he caused in himself. By not having to trust in God and eating of the apple, eating of the fruit, rather than trusting God and not eating of it. And that's what Rosh Hashanah is. Rosh Hashanah is the appreciation and the realization that the judgment is for the purpose of correction and improvement. And if we want to merit a din that's good and sweet, basically what's our job? Our job is to show Hashem that we're in the process of correction now. Hashem, I'm correcting myself. I'm improving myself. And therefore by doing so, God says, okay, I see you're already in the process. I can make it very sweet. I can look at the past. You made some mistakes, but I see you're in the process. You want to change. You want to grow. That's a much sweeter judgment. When we come to God first, so to speak, and say, God, help me in the process. Hashem's so loving and so kind. He says, I'm there for you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to make it sweet. And that's the essence of it. And that's, in fact, why we say it's a sweet year. We should have a good and sweet year. Because we realize that the judgment that God gives us is always good and always sweet. My blessing for everybody is, of course, that we should appreciate the power of the time we're in right now, the power of the day. The realization that we're going to be judged, but at the same time the realization that the judgment is only for the good. It's only for because of God's love for us. And if we could sort of anticipate that judgment and say, God, I'm going to start the process of fixing up myself, we'll realize that the judgment is going to be so sweet and so good. And we'll realize that the Rosh Hashanah, the emotion, the correct emotion on Rosh Hashanah is joy. It's the joy in the realization that God loves us so much, that He cares about us so much, that He's willing to give us exactly what we need in this coming year to bring about the perfection of our souls, the perfection of the neshamas, so that we can truly merit the light of God and understand the Word of God. And Bezrat Hashem be zeichet and be goel tzedek and be amen.
Amen.